The art of screen printing.
Welcome to the Art of Screen Printing, presented by GSG. He's Corey Gray. I'm Lon Winters with Graphic Elephants. How's it going, Corey?
Going good.
A little intro / explanation of why and how we do channel seps. We've been working back and forth between layers and channels through this whole exercise, and now we're going to really dive into channels and how we use them to build our separations. Corey, you want to hook us up?
On our videos, we've talked about how we've used channels along the way to get some of the things that we're looking to extract out of this information. Now, layers, in layers, every time we actually are working with layers, RGB mode is always turned on, but you can see that there's these breakdowns in the actual mode that are showing. Basically, this is a breakup of the colors and how they are, when they mix together, the red, the green, the blue, we get all the colors that we see in our finished color image. So, but the beauty of channels for separators or screen printing is that they only view individually in black and white. And why that's important to us as separators is that we require plates to be made that we expose to screen so we can run ink through them and then get our color image. But many times extracting that information can be difficult, which is part of why we use layers as often as we do. And as such, because these modes do show you what your breakdowns are, if we turn off any kind of our layers at any one point, it changes how it interprets the information it's seen. So if I want to extract a certain amount of information, all I got to do is turn a layer on or turn a layer off to get what I want. So for channels, because it works in black and white, if, for instance, I were to take this and make a copy of this, everything that you see is in black would be what would expose to a screen. And everything that is white would be considered clear or non-existent. So I'm going to zoom up here a little bit. And even though we have some halftones in here, but anything that's white is clear. So it's not positive information that your RIP software would see. So we'll talk about how that's important and how we get whites to show up in our separation process. You can also use CMYK as a color mode. We'll go over to the CMYK. It breaks down the configuration of your image a little differently. It's great with black. If you have any black in your image, it's going to show up beautifully in your black channel in CMYK color mode. So cyans are more isolated. Your reds, and so magenta, all your reds can be more isolated, and your warm tones on the yellow. So we kind of use both in between. It's certainly up to you, but know this, that when you're working with channels, it's only in black and white. So if you're on a single channel with nothing else turned on, you will only view it in black and white. Now, you can get color out of them by turning more than one channel on. You can see if I turn these on, we're seeing our colors. Actually, if I turn a couple more of our layers on here, you can see how that's going to change, again, from breakdown to breakdown. But this is how we mine information so that we can make our plates for separation purposes. And we'll go through that more as we go through each one of these. But this is just a little introduction as to why we use channels, and it's very effective for separation. Now we're looking at two versions of the GSG logo. One, you can see where I've got part of the design on. And if I go up there and I start clicking through my mode breakdown, you can see that we're seeing information from the logo and we're seeing it from GSG. But let's go ahead and go down to this one where I have only the GSG turned on. And so as I toggle through my breakdowns, you can see there's some slight change, but what we're concerned with here is just the full shape of the GSG and its spires. And we're going to go ahead, we're going to make our first plate essentially for separation. It's going to be blue, so always make a spot color so that your RIP software can see this. We're going to change the color to a blue. Well, it's a little more turquoisey there. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to name that called Blue GSG. I know there's a series of these as we go through the separation process. Now I'm going to take the layer that GSG is on. I'm going to make a selection of it. So it has, you can see the marching ants. There's the full selection of the shape. I'm going to go to this plate and I'm just going to fill it Okay, and now remember we talked about black and white. So an individual channel is turned on, it's just black and white, okay? But I usually work an extra channel, and I call it fabric. I like to be able to work against the color that we're actually doing the print on. And then this is for a black shirt. So this is great because the black shirt will help us in some of our endeavors here. So if I turn the blue back on, boom, now we got the blue that we're seeing in the top where our original image is, but we have a highlight and a shadow in there. So let's go back to our breakdown in our mode, and you can see that we have the shadow. It looks really good here. It has the same shape and everything, but we have all this positive area back here too. But remember, everything's on layers. So let's go ahead and turn our fabric off. And actually, I'm going to turn that halo off. And now I click and drag a copy of this down. Always work with a copy of your original breakdowns. Do not work with the originals because they will change your layers as far as the color. Okay, so you can see now I have this shadow here. I got a little bit extra highlight in there, or a little extra grayscale value. So I'm going to go to levels. And I'm going to use my white eyedropper tool, and I'm going to blow this lighter texture out. Now it's gone. Okay, I'm going to say okay. Now we have just this information for the shadow left over. Oops. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom back up here. And I'm going to basically make this a black channel. I'm just going to call it shadow. Say okay. Now I'm going to turn my fabric back on. I'm going to turn the blue, or spot color, back on. And then I'm going to turn the shadow on. And now you can see that I have the same image shadow that we have from our original version. And this will be this information will be knocked out of our white base when we get to that part of the separation. But this is how you get a shadow texture to work from our original image. And we'll apply that later on. We're going to make a white printer, as Lon says. And what's important here is we are working on black. And if you don't print a white printer under your nice bright colors, you're going to have a real mutation of the color. So to make a base for this, we're going to make a selection of the blue channel. And I'm sure if you're a screen printer, you know what a choke is, because you want to have your white printer have a choke, because if it peeks out from underneath your color, that's not going to look good. So we are going to basically choke that. As you see the marching ants, we're going to choke that back by going under select, modify, and contract. And I'm going to go back 2 pixels. You can do 1, it gets a little close to that edge, but 2 is sort of a safety zone. Unlike Illustrator, where we can do things by points, we don't have that option in Photoshop. So it has to be by pixels. So we're going to go with 2 pixels, and I'm going to go, and I'm actually going to make a new spot channel. We're going to call it the white printer. And its solidification is probably more like around 60% when it hits the shirt. Okay, I'm going to move it behind our blue. So now if I turn the printer off, you can see how it's changing the blue from its color to a little duller if it's not there. And also too, I zoom in, you can kind of see that I've changed the solidity of the blue to kind of emulate how that would work on a shirt. And now you can see the outside of the blue ink where it stops, but you can also see the white base showing through this, what would be the ink. Of course, it looks like it's huge here, but GSG is going to print probably this big on the shirt. So you're not going, that lip's going to be perfect for your white base to keep that color bright and then also not peek out from behind. Now the shadow that we added, which here again is just on its own channel, but we're going to use this information strictly as an extraction and take it out of the white printer, so that when this shadow area of information is removed, it'll automatically make the blue a little darker. So let's go ahead and make a selection of the shadow, say okay, go to white printer, and I'm actually going to delete that information out. 1, 2, and 3. Now you can see here, this is still a solid base, and this is halftone. If I turn my fabric on, I turn the blue on, now you're seeing that representation of the shadow just because it's removed on the base. We no longer need this anymore, so we'll say okay. And then we also need to have our white highlight. This red mode, actually, if I pull it down and I make a copy and I inverse it, now we have the white that we need. I'm going to take my white eyedropper tool. I'm going to knock out that extra value we don't need from the shadow area. I'm going to make this white. its own channel. And now if I turn everybody on together, we're seeing almost the same information here. I need to remove a little bit of the white. And actually, I'm going to knock it back down with the levels, remove some of that information. And then there we go. Now let's turn them all on together. And that's how we do a basic, simple separation with 3 colors, white, blue, and black.
We really get some dimension out of that when you're able to use the shadow of the shirt itself and then give it that hot white at the very top. So that's really what made this logo really effective. He's Corey, I'm Lon. We are Graphic Elephants. This has been the Art of Screen Printing presented by GSG. See you next time.